Hello and welcome to the Car Care Enough channel, and welcome to this beautiful 2004 Toyota Camry. Now, this Camry, when you look at it from the outside, looks extremely clean. It's really well kept and preserved. Looks like a low mile example. Let's kind of take a quick tour around it, and then we'll show you the miles, which you might have already been able to tell by the title of this video. First, let's look at the paint of this car. I mean, this thing is in really good shape. Body is straight. Now, it's not very clean right now. It just came into the shop. Body is straight. Paint is shiny. Let's look a little bit on the inside. Look at this interior. Seats are preserved well. They're clean. And this is a very tough color interior to keep clean. Everything looks well put together. Nothing is ripped or coming apart. Let's look at the back seat. Let's unlock the door first. Back seat is clean, and my absolute favorite. Look at these, how clean this floor mats. These are impossible to keep clean with this color, but they're so clean. This car is very well preserved. Got a little bit of sagging headliner there, but otherwise the headliner is very clean in this car. Now let's look at the miles of this car. This car have 299,122, just shy of 300,000 miles. I mean, this thing is in such good shape. Is unbelievable, both inside and out. We're going to take it for a drive because the owner basically wants a 300,000 mile service. Let's take a quick look under the hood before we go drive it, because one of the initial concerns is the power steering pump makes a whine when the car is cold, goes away when it's hot, and that is your number one cue. Your fluid is low. It's not super low, but it's low enough where, there you are. It's low enough where when we're cold, the fluid is too low, the pump is taking in air, but when things warm up, the fluid level rises and we're good. So let's take a quick look at the fluid level. We did top it off a little bit because I was not going to drive it in. Like you notice, it's low. And immediately, right next to it, we see why it's low. These power steering hoses are leaking, both of them actually. First, this is a return line, super common on these to leak. Second, the supply line, the feed, like the main feed one that feeds the oil pump, that's also, you can see that hose is all wet. That's also leaking. So we have these two initially that they are leaking. The engine, relatively clean. This is a 2AZ. This is a pre-low tension ring 2AZ, so it doesn't burn oil. First things that jump at me, a C Delco in a Toyota. Don't like these hoses, but they work, and I don't like these clamps, but again, they work. Again, same thing there, a C Delco, and you can see all kinds of oil, like down here in this area. That's where your power steering line, and the bottom one as well. We'll see that better when we lift the car, but the lower part is actually completely corroded and leaking. But overall, I don't see a lot with this car. Starter's been replaced at some point with a Denso unit. Alternator, hard to, yeah, it is an aftermarket one. See that sticker right there? That don't belong in the original. So, not the original alternator and starter. But one more thing, we have a little oil leak from the valve cover gasket right here. Not a huge leak, but we'll look at it more underneath. I don't see anything else. Everything looking great. So here is the plan of action. Let's take this car for a drive, because the owner also have a few concerns. Over bumps, we have some noises. We have some issues that he's concerned about, and he wants to basically decide, are we gonna keep going for another 300,000 miles, or are we gonna thank this car and call it a day? So let's go for a quick test drive. We'll come back, we'll lift it up, check the whole car, and see how does a 300,000 mile Toyota that has both miles and age really hold up after all these years and miles. Let's take this Camry for a quick drive. And the shop is extremely dirty today. It seems like this is a broken record that I keep saying that, but we have salt outside, and we are starting inside the shop because it is literally 0 degrees Fahrenheit today. So it's extremely cold, so we're gonna start on the inside. I already hear all kinds of noises from this car, but let's take it for a drive and let's hear. So the first bump coming up here, let's listen to the noise it makes. There's all kinds of creaky from the front, especially on, it felt more like the driver's side, but we're gonna take a look. Let's take it for a drive, and of course, in the typical fashion of our in-shop videos, the Tesla graveyard have gotten really large. Now look at this thing. They are filling up here. Probably can't get parts for most of these cars. It only grows. So here's the thing about this car. When I first saw it, I remember having this conversation with the customer that it has 300,000 miles, but I never imagined it to be in this shape. And to a point, I forgot. You know, he dropped off the car, waited for a few days till we got to it, and I looked at it, I'm like, man, this is such a nice car. I wonder if it even has 100,000 miles. This has 300,000 miles. It's perfectly quiet, other than the suspension making some noise. It's very comfortable, no wind noise. These are really quiet cars, folks, and they're very comfortable. Actually nice cars and really reliable. Driving it, it does feel like the suspension is a little all over the place, and when I hit the brakes, I hear a definite clunk. Something is moving in the suspension. It's just a feeling. So now we got a feel for this car. I don't have wheel bearing noises. I don't have abnormal noises from the engine. Transmission shifting okay. And this is something where we've already done this inspection off camera because I like to spend my time without distractions. Something about this that is potentially an issue in the future. The transmission. So the transmission, it doesn't have the smoothest shifts in the world, but it's working. And this is something I kind of advised the customer about this, and we'll talk to you about the rest of the stuff with this car. But for a 300,000 mile car, folks, this is extremely impressive. Engine doesn't burn oil, car runs perfectly fine. It's relatively smooth. Now, the one thing we have with this car, there's also a concern. The customer thought we have an exhaust leak because when the car is cold and the RPMs are high, it's like a vibration or a buzz almost from the engine. And that is something we're going to investigate as soon as we pull in the shop, because I don't think we have an exhaust leak. Like when you stop in gear, like you can feel roughness in the body, and like it shakes. It almost makes like a buzz, and that could be motor mounts, but we're gonna check them. But the main thing is the suspension. There's a lot of suspension noise and movement in the front, and that's where we want to address this. We want to look into it and see. Hello, dead Teslas. Wonder when these cars sit so long, are we eventually gonna have like a dead big battery and now they're sitting bricks? I wonder. There's actually some more backup Tesla graveyard right there. You can see it. They're all covered in snow. I told you it's super cold today. So let's pull in the shop and let's see what we see with this car. Okay. I even hear noises when I turn the wheel. So this is the other thing. All right. Let's go put this thing up in the air and we'll see what we see. Okay, let's take a look at one thing before. I feel like this is bent, because I keep having a hard time opening. Yeah, this is bent. Like you see this right here, it is bent backwards. This should be a little bit more forward, because now you have to really get your hand in there and open it. I was wondering, I'm like, am I forgetting how to open a hood in a Camry? The first thing I want to look at here is, before we lift it up, we already know we got the power steering leaks. That we already know. But the first thing I want to look at is that rumble. And something super common is this, the dog bone mount. So let's inspect it. If we look right here, would you look at that? We have it's basically tore completely up. You see it right there? It's completely torn. So that's no go. So that's the first thing we're going to recommend, is this mount. We're going to take a look at the other mounts, make sure they're not collapsed or anything. But knowing these cars, mounts are not common, but this is super common. All this does, and we call it dog bone mount, it's actually a torque rod. Every time the engine wants to move back or forward, this holds it. That's all this does. It just stabilizes the vibration, and this is exactly what we have. Having said that, let's go lift this car up and see what we see underneath it. The lift is all the way down, because we had a lowered car here earlier. That's CT200. We looked at it a while back. Let's start our mid-rise inspection, is what I call it, because this is your perfect opportunity to look at the struts. So right off, I see that this strut is actually an aftermarket one, just by the look of the top mount here. This is different. It's not leaking, very slight leakage. This insulator is torn, so that's not good. Then we look at our control arm, and I already see a problem, folks. That control arm it has a giant tear on the side that goes all the way across. You see it right here? That's the tear that is no good. A few cracks, like the ones on this side, these are not an issue, but this is a tear, and that is not good. The other thing is, this is a good opportunity to look at your brakes, which this side brakes, I really hope you can see it. It's like it's almost worn down to nothing. We might need pads here. Now let's continue our inspection on the suspension. This is also an aftermarket strut. You can see it clearer here. This top is different than what an original one. This insulator is completely gone, but it's not leaking. We don't have noises in the back. The rear brakes are drum brakes, which just from the brake pedal feel, which felt off, we might have a problem here, because we might need to clean and adjust these rear drums. Let's continue our inspection. This side, no leaks on the strut, so that's good. Also, the insulator is gone, but it doesn't warrant us tearing this strut down just for the insulator. It's not worth it. Same thing with the drum brakes here. They're relatively loose. These tires are actually very new. I mean, you can still see the markings on them. These are almost brand new. Then we move to, we have problems, my brothers and sisters. This is a blown strut. You can see oil all over the place here. There's oil all over here. This is a blown strut. So that's the first source of our noise. Let's look at the control arm over here on this side. We got serious problems here. Folks, this control arm completely separated. You see how this bushing is completely separated and the control arm is dropped? This car is going to need control arms, lower control arms. And now with this strut leaking, we do need struts as well. Of course, we always replace struts in pairs. Let's look at the brakes over here. And uh-oh, we have some serious problems here. Because these brakes, really hard to show you. I will really try to show you. This is going to be difficult, but these brakes are nowhere near close to needing replacement. So we have something going on with the other side wheel. Let's raise this car up, back up all the way, and look underneath it some more to see what else we find. Okay, let's take a look underneath this car. First thing is rust levels. This is nothing. Remember, this is a 2004 model year. First thing is we have oil here, and this I already know what it is. We looked at it. This is the power steering lines that are leaking, and here's that other line, super rusty. You can see it right there where it's completely corroded and leaking right here. So that's going to need to be addressed. This is not good. Zip ties holding covers. We can do better than that. Let's look at the radiator. Radiator looks like it's been replaced. This is not an original radiator. I don't see any leaks here, so that looks good. Do see those clamps that I dislike, but they're working for now. Then I see aftermarket axle. That's interesting, but I'm feeling vibrations, so this must be the good aftermarket quality. And I already see the old, you see the old grease. Ooh, this wheel is really hard to turn. We might have a locked up caliper here, folks. These inner pads really worn down, and these pads are nowhere near worn down. So this is a problem. We're going to investigate it a little bit. Well, let's continue. I have a small seepage from the transmission case. This is not something that really warrants repair. I wouldn't worry about it. Other leaks, this is power steering leak, a very small rack and pinion leak. I wouldn't address this at this point. We don't have, really this side is not leaking, this side has a very small leak. I'm not worried about it. This exhaust has been repaired and it's aftermarket. That's why this O2 sensor wire is just sitting there. Oh, I'm sorry, it has a zip tie. So that was done well. Not an issue. Ball joints have a little bit of grease, but they're not an issue. This ball joint looks decent. Strut, however, is leaking all over the place. You see it. Compare it to this one. This one is dry. You see the difference. Let's continue on to the rest of the car, but before we do, I want to look at the sway bar links. Remember sway bar links? You just grab them from here, move them up and down. This one is good. It's actually original. This one is also good and original. Now, oil leaks on the engine. This is not an oil leak. I see so many technicians, oh, let's do an oil pan gasket or a sealer or whatever. This is actually not an oil leak, because if you follow it, it goes all the way from the filter. So this is basically a sloppy oil change, is what this is. It just, oil travels on these. But if you look up, we have, it's really hard to show you and try to get you a good angle there. I hope you can see it. We have some oil leaks coming from the top. Not big, but that's the valve cover gasket. Could be a front cover, but I think in this case, more valve cover gasket. Now, let's move the rest of the car. Body is nice and clean. No real big rust. Body plug is here. This body plug is missing. Let's see if we can find it inside. Oh, it's right there. We'll get it out and reinstall it. I see it's right there. You see, yep, there we go. Fell down to the ground. I don't want to show you the ground because the shop is dirty. We have salt, my friends. Salt makes a mess. So let's install this body plug. There we go. I can sleep much better at night now. Brake lines on these are coated, so we're not worried. Body plug here, also missing. This one, oh, it's right there as well. Cool. I think I'll have to spend some time and get this one out. This side is also good. We have it. Rust levels are very low in this car. You do have some rust, of course, here. This is an older car. but this is not compromising rust yet. Rear suspension, majority of the things look original, except these struts. You can tell the color difference between everything. Sway bar link is good. Sway bar bushing is very common, is good. Looks like they've been replaced at some point. Same thing here. This is good. I have two concerns here, but they are not really, we don't have any play. You see this bushing? It has a small crack in it. There's zero play and zero noise from the back. So we're not going to worry about this, but this is something that might come up in the future. Same thing here. See that split in the bushing? They're really not common on these, but with age, things are going to happen. Here's that other strut, which for some reason is a lot more rusty than the other side. Wonder if they replaced one than the other. Exhaust, of course, this is rusty land. This is not original, but I was very impressed how quiet it is actually. So this, whoever did this exhaust did a good job and used decent aftermarket quality stuff. This car overall, for its age, I mean, it's definitely a keeper because the rust levels are not over the top. Yeah, we have rust from the straps and whatnot, but it's not really, I've seen a lot worse. I mean, this where we have it safely lifted here. I don't see any concerns. Folks, we have some issues with this car. We have some issues with the suspension, but they're not really over the top. I mean, we need struts, we need control arms. Some of these cars have gotten these done long time ago. And then we have some leaks, mainly from the power steering system. Really, valve cover gasket. We can clean and adjust the rear brakes. Not a lot, but I want to do one thing. We're going to remove this wheel, investigate this brake situation, because when you have severe abnormal wear like that, like you have one side almost worn down to nothing and one side is fine and the wheel is really hard to turn, we might have a locked up caliper or something else. So let's go lower this car, pull the wheel off. Let's take a quick look before we wrap up this video. All right. This is not pretty. Look at these pads. These are almost done for. Inner pads. Almost done for as well. Something's going on here. We're going to investigate it. Let's take our caliper off and see. Somebody's been here. Obviously 300,000 miles, multiple brake jobs, but this was a little too tight. Well, the first thing is our pins are moving. Like you see these pins right here? They're moving. They're free. This one is moving. This one is moving. So that's the first indication we don't have a locked up pin. Yeah. Way more than likely have a locked up caliper. I mean, this is an aftermarket pads. They're just crusty. This one moves. This one moves. There's only one thing for it, caliper. So let's try to compress it and see. We have a victim, if you would. That's the word I'm going to use here. Look at my brake compressor, brake caliper compressor tool. We gave it a redecoration. This actually happened on the Supra that is in the back. We're video coming up on that hopefully soon. Basically, I had it pressed and we pressed the brake and it bent this. This was, I've had this tool for over 10 years and I've never seen, look how thick this metal, this is a high quality tools, guys. Look how much brake force does. When you push the brakes and this is holding the caliper, look how it bends it. That's how much braking force you actually have in cars. Still works, but it's not ideal. So we have one on order to replace it. And this is lifetime warranty, so yeah. This caliper is not having it. I mean, I can force it in, but this is not gonna work. I mean, when you release the hydraulic pressure, you want this caliper to naturally retract. That's not gonna happen. This caliper is locked up. Relatively common on these to do that. I've seen a lot of Camrys and Highlanders actually of this similar generation do that. Cut and dry, We need brakes because we have severe uneven wear, and these pads right here, I mean, look at them. They're worn down to nothing. And we're going to need one caliper. Some folks will say we have to replace both calipers. And in a perfect world, yes, but you can get away with replacing one caliper as long as your other caliper is healthy. And when you go test drive it, you hit the brakes hard. You don't have a swerve to one side or another. And here's another shot with the wheel off of that control arm. You can see it better. It has like a complete tear all the way across. And that's how you know we have a problem. There's all that oil from the power steering line. You see it all over the place here. These are the lines at the top. And the engine mount over here, while we have it, this one is actually collapsed. And you see it, like you see how the metal part is in. This is a collapsed engine mount. So this is something we're going to need to address. Well, let's go look at the other mount on the other side. This mount is not collapsed, and you can see it standing straight at the top. The transmission is not touching the top of it. And then this mount, really hard to tell, but we could see it from the top. This mount is actually good as well. So I think all we need here is the top mount and the side mount right here. The cool thing is, when we do control arms, we actually replace this mount. This mount gets taken out, so we're going to swap it out real quick. There's no labor added, so there goes that. So folks, this is how a 300,000 mile Camry looks like. It's actually not in bad shape. Like I told you, I mean, most of this stuff, it's just regular wear and tear. The engine runs fine. Transmission does have an interesting shifting pattern, but it's working. And that's the conversation with this customer. So we're kind of filming this at the end before we actually start the job, the working on the car. I've talked to the customer. I gave him basically an estimate for all original parts. And then he was like, we are on a budget, and this is a lot. I mean, everything together, it's a lot. So we're actually going with some aftermarket parts here. They are in the understanding. I explained to them some of these parts, especially the suspension stuff, they are not going to last as much as the originals. They might be noisy here and there, but they're going to work. And safety-wise, I'm not worried. Same thing with the brakes. I mean, aftermarket brakes, they work, but they're noisy. They don't fit right. They're not perfect. That's a compromise because for them, meeting the budget that they have in mind to keep this car going is more important than keeping this car 10, 15 years. I mean, obviously, there's going to be a breaking point with this car where it's like, it's done. But they want to keep it for a few more years, so they want to go with aftermarket stuff. And it's their car, their money, they're well-informed, and they made the decision that is right for them. Folks, what I want you to take from this video is, when your car is new, all the maintenance and the care and the dedication that you put into it will pay up like this one is right now. I mean, this car, you would not believe that it has 300,000 miles. It's very clean. Obviously, the owner of this car did all the maintenance, took care of everything, kept the inside clean, kept the outside clean, really loved this car. And that's why at 300,000 miles, you wouldn't believe this thing has 300,000 miles because it's in pristine condition. I will dare say that it is in pristine condition, even with the issues that it have. I mean, we're not tearing into a transmission or an engine here. I mean, this is just suspension and brakes and a few leaks, not really big stuff. Folks, I hope this video is helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. And until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.